All right, gentlemen. I think if you're both ready, Chris, Tim, if you want to give me the green light that you're both all set.
We're all set here.
All right, thank you, Tim. Chris?
Let's go, Lucas.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm jumping the gun on this. Let's make it happen, right? Okay. All right, let's get into it. All right. Good afternoon. And thank you all for attending today during, I guess, what is the unofficial end to the summer with Labor Day weekend coming up. My name is Lucas Soucy, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Congruent Solutions, where we provide outsourced back office administration and record-keeping software solutions to the industry. Our webinar series is an initiative to discuss topics, issues, and challenges related to the retirement industry, where we invite industry leaders and experts to discuss the subjects and hopefully help the industry address them. Today's topic, of course, is the industry outlook beyond 2022. Any of our prior webinars you can view on Congruent's YouTube channel. So marketing piece is out of the way, checked off. Nobody's here to see me anyways, right? So on to the good stuff. With me, I have two very knowledgeable guests in the retirement space, none other than Tim Rouse and Chris Gaston. I'll do a quick round of introductions for those of you who may not know them. And certainly while I ask you to please hold your applause until the end, I'll add that at any point, go ahead and enter in a question in the Q&A. And if we have time to address them directly on the webinar, we'll do so. First up, we have Tim Rouse. Tim is the Executive Director of the Spark Institute Advisory Board. He has over 30 years of experience in the financial services industry, mostly focused on retirement. He's worked with plan sponsors in the public and private sector, Taft-Hartley plans, nonprofit, colleges, universities, you name it. He is the former president of the National Association of Government Defined Contribution Administrators Industry Board, affectionately known as NAGDCABE. And incidentally, I was going to name my firstborn son NAGDCABE, but due to irreconcilable differences with my wife, that didn't happen. But anyways, we're lucky to have Tim here with us. Next up is Chris Gaston. Chris is Principal Director of Government Relations at Davis & Harman. He has over a dozen years of experience on Capitol Hill and represents clients on a wide range of issues before Congress, particularly on retirement and savings policy. Before joining Davis & Harman, Chris served as the Chief of Staff for U.S. Representative Rush Holt, Democrat, New Jersey, who was a senior member of the House Committee on Education and Labor. I happen to know that Chris's mom is a teacher too, so I know that if we get out of line or off topic, he's very effective at getting us back on track. That all being out of the way, who's ready to have some fun? All right, anybody? Chris? Okay. If you are, if you're in the wrong place, sorry. This one's going to be completely tedious. The fun one was yesterday, so too bad. But I'm kidding. Anyways, we'll have a little bit of fun, and I know that I can't stump either of you when it comes to legislative or regulatory issues. So if I were to channel my inner Cliff Clavin, I guess, perhaps I can come up with a little something. So during the webinar today, what I'll do is I'll toss out a few fun facts about individuals who have helped out and contributed to the retirement space in the public sector over the years. And we'll see if either of you can guess who it might be. So this is either going to be fun or it's going to be flop, and everyone will make fun of me, but that's all right. It won't be the first time. I'm going to preface this and just say that I've only randomly grabbed a few individuals for this. Certainly so many more have helped shape our industry in the public sector, and definitely deserve credit, including all the staffers and personnel who help support them. So anyways, I'm going to kick it off with a quick example. Let's start off with a little fun. Near and dear to where I grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts. His father was a custodian at Mass Mutual. Prior to public service, he was a high school teacher. He's the Democratic leader of the Friends of Ireland caucus and has been inducted into the Irish American Hall of Fame. Anybody? No, Bulger. Thank you, Tim. Go on, Chris. You got this one.
I mean,
No.
I'm gonna go on a lark. I mean, is it Chairman Neal?
Chairman Neal. Thank you very much. Very good. Well done. Circle gets the square. So very good. Very good on that. Yeah. I don't know.
Like it's like wait, don't tell me. I'm getting like points that will lead up to Lucas recording a voicemail on my cell phone.
This is it. Luckily, if you do. So yeah, I don't know what gets you in the Irish American Hall of Fame, but he's there. So all right, let's get serious. So I'm going to start out right up the gate. We had a couple questions from our audience prior to the webinar as they were signing up. So I'm going to start off with one. It's actually two combined. And I think, how can we move on and talk about what's coming up if we haven't talked about what has already come to pass, I guess, or we haven't solved everything before. So a question from the audience is, when can we expect the IRS to issue final R&D regulations? And then a secondary one that came in along those lines is more specific and asks to discuss the IRS ruling on the 10-year timeframe for inherited beneficiaries. So, Chris, if I could maybe direct that your way.
I mean, I think it's what's past is prologue, Lucas. So it's a good reminder that all the stuff we're going to talk about that yet may come, it doesn't materialize overnight, and it doesn't become effective just because Congress passed it. You know, sometimes the regulators need to issue implementing regulations, and that's certainly the case with the so-called kind of stretch IRA changes that were made back in 2019 to pay for the first Secure Act, the Secure Act 1.0. We're going to talk a lot more about Secure Act 2.0, but Secure Act 1.0, contained a multitude of positive changes to the retirement space. Spark was very engaged as a part of that and very supportive. One of the kind of key components of how to make it deficit neutral, if you will, kind of Washington has to operate on deficit neutrality, sometimes, not always, but certainly never. And it was to kind of limit the ability of inherited beneficiaries to take an inherited IRA and stretch it over their lifetime, right? Congress said you only have 10 years, and both of your questioners asked kind of a very important and very educated question, which is, A, when are we going to get the final regs? And on that, I think, Lucas, you could play your best Johnny Carson, put an envelope to your head, rip it open, and it's going to have a big question mark. There were, hundreds of pages and pages and pages of comments that industry participants, actually a couple of my colleagues here in the firm, wrote maybe a few hundred of those pages of comments that IRS and Treasury received from the stakeholder community about questions, concerns, interpretations as to what they said with the RMD changes there about how and when inherited beneficiaries could take those benefits. And we don't know when the IRS is going to come out with its final regulations. It's a little bit of an unknown, and I'll copy something one of my colleagues here at the firm says, Mike Hadley, those who know aren't talking, and those who are talking don't know. So I think we're all going to kind of wait and see when that comes out. The second piece, Lucas, I think is a really important question, which is, I think most folks were not of the view when the Secure Act was passed that the Treasury IRS Department seems to be of the view. Well, they've said this is their view, which is not that a participant has 10 years to take the inherited balance, withdraw it from the IRA and pay taxes on it, but they actually need to take RMD style withdrawals each of those 10 years, not in the penultimate or ultimate years, but actually fractionally along the way. I think on that, most practitioners did not take that view. They shared those comments with Treasury IRS, but I don't think we're not expecting Treasury IRS to reverse course there and go back to, you have 10 years to take it, choose as you will. That this is not a choose your own adventure story, that you actually need to take a fractional percentage every year of those inherited balances. But I think it's a really nerdy question, but a really good one to remind us all that everything we're going to talk about today, A, it's going to take time to get passed. Secure Act took, a better part of 4 years. And B, once it's passed, there's still going to be a lot of questions about how to interpret it. And some of those questions might only come up once the regulators put out the regulations and kind of invite new questions that we didn't foresee during the drafting. So I think it's a great way to start, Lucas.
Yeah, I know it definitely got me off for a little while, kicked us off the nonsense of the trivia there, right into something serious. So I do appreciate that. So, so I mean, we're talking about 1.0, right? And as you mentioned, many things may not have been settled yet. We saw a lot of great provisions in it. I think, addressing the one bad apple rule. We saw a long-time part-time employees getting a focus to help expand some coverage, RMD age, encouraging annuities, tax credits, penalty-free withdrawals, and then right after that, CARES Act hits. So now, we're faced with Secure 2.0, which I think is probably the primary focus for today. So to set the stage, Chris, can you maybe walk us through what 2.0 looks like as of today?
Sure. Yeah. I think, you should take my job, Lucas, because you framed it exactly correctly, which is, even before the ink was dried on Secure 1.0, and actually before maybe the president even signed it into law, there were ideas that just didn't get into that. And people were saying, hey, we need another bill, right? I had this idea, but I came to it late. I had this idea, but these people raised a question. Now I solved that. So kind of the process for Secure 2.0 kind of really started in earnest, essentially as 1.0 was being signed into law. And, that was, again, 2019, pandemic kind of disrupted that process for a little bit, as Lucas, I think, as you pointed out, kind of refocused Congress on kind of short-term retirement challenges, and kind of resulted in that period of time where many of you, depending on kind of what role you play in this space, had to deal with administering, processing, or figuring out how to compute based on participant requests, coronavirus distributions, CRDs. That's a term hopefully of the past. But there have been a lot of ideas that people weren't able to get into the 1.0 bill, as I said, or, I think Lucas, again, as you noted, kind of as 1.0 was implemented, people said, hey, Congress didn't really mean that, right? So for example, MEPs and PEPs, which I think, Spark and Spark members have been very active in helping kind of stand up and get new employers to offer to new employees the ability to save for retirement. Kind of there was an error of omission, if you will, in that was extended to 401k plans, but not 403b plans. Not that people said teachers and not-for-profit charity workers shouldn't have access to MEPs and PEPs. There's just a cross-reference really that wasn't there until too late. And once it was pointed out, kind of everyone said, well, let's fix it in the next bill. So, things like that have percolated. And what that led to was, Tim and Lucas, maybe this is not how you solve and celebrate your kind of Cinco de Mayo every year, but back in May of 2021, the House Ways and Means Committee, which is the lead tax committee in the House of Representatives, chaired by Lucas's quiz question winner, Richard Neal, came together with all of their members, Republicans and Democrats, kind of overcoming all of this nonsense that you sometimes read about, that people don't work together, and said, what are the good ideas in the retirement space that didn't get into 1.0 that we can put together and create another bill? So whether it's, if you're in a 457 plan, you don't have to make the election for your deferral on the first day of the month. Gosh, that makes sense. It just needs a package to go with. Maybe it's, look, the tax credits for starting a new plan, they were, increased in Secure 1.0, but now we're hearing, wouldn't it be better and wouldn't it be great if we could increase it a little bit more to make even more employers kind of get over that inertia and offer a plan for the first time? Or, fixing that 403b PEP issue, or, one issue that's gotten a lot of attention is, a lot of you are involved in the investment space. Collective investment trusts become very popular in the 401k space, but are not available in the 403b space because the law didn't permit it. Well, let's take all of these ideas, kind of in, good ideas, great ideas, none of them essentially game changing, but all taken together. Let's put together a bill. And in May of 21, they did, under the leadership of Chairman Neal and Kevin Brady, the ranking member, and came up with what's called the Securing a Strong Retirement Act. A bill that does lots of things, kind of focused, if you will, on expanding coverage, helping individuals save and simplifying retirement plans. And, those issues are all so front and center for Spark members. And Spark was really involved and very supportive of a lot of that, whether it's increasing the credits, as I said, kind of making it easier for long-term part-time, again, something that was in that 1.0, that long-term part-time folks who work 500 hours of service over 3 consecutive years, that they can be let into the plan. Well, instead of, let's do it over 2 consecutive years. Let's get them in faster. The RMD age, which Lucas, you pointed out in Secure 1.0, went up from 70.5, which it had been, set forever a day ago, to 72. Well, let's actually increase it a little bit more. Make it a little bit more appropriate. Folks are living, working, and experiencing life longer. Let's give them a little bit more time for their retirement to grow. All these ideas, from a Spark perspective, I think some of the nitty-gritty ones, and Lucas, I think your colleagues probably work with folks on this, how do you simplify plan administration? How do you simplify document notice requirements? How do you kind of, alleviate the needed to provide unenrolled participants with lots of notices? Lots of technical things there, allowing for self-certification of hardships. How do we make the system work better? That's where Spark spends its time. And those are the kinds of ideas that were passed in that House bill. So that was 2021. The House Ways and Means Committee alone doesn't come up with bills. I think they wish they could, but they can't enact them into law. There's other chambers that need to be engaged. And kind of fast forward through that summer into the fall, the Labor Committee, which has ERISA jurisdiction, right? Retirement is really the nexus between the tax code, which incentivizes the retirement savings, incentivize employer to offer a plan, et cetera, and ERISA, which protects the employees and provides kind of the framework for operating those plans. The Labor Committee got involved in the fall with its own proposals. Some they adopted kind of from the Ways and Means Committee, some they added some new ones, like clarifying the duties of a PEP trustee and kind of adding in some focus on some other issues that members thought were important. And that committee passed its bill in November. Actually, Tim, right around, I think, when we were down in Florida for the Spark meeting. Fast forward a couple of months later, and from November to March, those two bills were merged together. And in something you don't hear a lot about outside of the retirement space, the full House, back in March of this year, approved that Securing a Strong Retirement Act, what I think, Lucas, we all kind of collectively call Secure 2.0, by a huge vote. 4 or 5 members voted no, 400 and some members voted yes. And the House said, look, we've done our job. Now it's turned to the Senate. And I think the exciting thing is sometimes that happens and the Senate doesn't pick up. The Senate doesn't answer the call. And here, actually, what we've seen in the last 8 months, or the last 5 months from March till now, is the Senate and its tax and ERISA committees said, hey, we want to do this. We've got ideas. We'd like some of your ideas. Some of our members have some other ideas. We're going to put together our own bills. So there was a bill called the Rise and Shine Act, which is a creative title. If anyone wonders whether members of Congress are boring and don't have a sense of humor, these guys do. They took the RISE Act, which the Labor Committee had approved back in fall of 21, and they put their shine or polish on it. They called it the Rise and Shine Act. And they added some other provisions, some which I think Lucas will probably talk about because they've gotten some good attention in terms of, auto enrollment in new plans, or some new emergency savings options, in-plan options that employers working with service providers could consider. And some, again, additional clarifications. Every new law iterates. It's not just that 1.0 goes to 2.0, but actually 2.0 in this instance actually refines and modifies, enhances some of the 1.0 provisions. So, for example, there was a provision in Secure 1.0 to allow for group of plans, kind of a consolidated Form 5500, kind of a MEP-like structure where all of the components are the same fiduciary, same plan lineup, same plan document. But there are some questions about audit requirements. Who needs audits at what size, and should it be at the trust level? Should each firm have to do it? And so, for example, the Senate Help Committee, this ERISA committee on the Senate side, they said, well, look, we've gotten a lot of questions about this. Let's add a provision to clarify that. They've also done a couple other things. And that was great. And alone, if the House had passed the bill and a key Senate committee had passed the bill, that would be unusual in a lot of issue areas. But just a week later, kind of after that, you saw, just in the middle of June, you saw the Finance Committee, which is the tax component of the Senate, and kind of equivalent to the Ways and Means Committee, again, tying it back to Lucas's question, Chairman Neal's Senate colleagues, they said, look, we've got ideas too. And they put out their own bill. They didn't go for the wordplay of Rise and Shine. They called it the EARN Act, and added in a lot of new provisions. Another solution on emergency savings, some provisions, again, that I'm sure you guys and your members are and folks will implement, for example, addressing automatic disaster relief. So, creating a process where hardship withdrawals for disaster can be made without Congress having to pass a special rule to eliminate the 10% penalty tax on those withdrawals, and some other things. And so where we are now, Lucas, and maybe I'll turn it back, is kind of a really exciting time because you've got a House passed bill. You've got 2 Senate committees, the key Senate committees on tax and retirement, who've passed their own bills. And you've got a process now where the staff from those committees, kind of 4 staff on the House side and 4 staff on the Senate side, Republicans and Democrats, are now trying to take these pieces and come up with one bill. And I think, there's a good chance that can happen yet this year. And I think, that's probably why a number of you are on the webinar today to know what to expect.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think if you look at it, if you look back to Secure 1.0, I guess as we have to call it now, right? As it's being known now, and CARES and things, it received a lot of bipartisan and bicameral support, right? So Secure, and I can say this like Alex Trebek because I do have the numbers right in front of me, but it was, House was 297 to 120, Senate 71 to 23. And then CARES Act was, 419 to 6 in the House and 96-0 in the Senate, right? So, a tremendous amount of support. Retirement's getting a lot of focus lately. There are always those stragglers, right? Those 4 people that just can't find the yay button. In their defense, possibly they don't know it exists as an option, that no is the only option, but I think that it's the same group always. But, it definitely seems to be retirement is in the hot seat right now and getting a lot of focus and attention. And it's great to have that attention focused our way. So It's exciting times, I think. Tim, I'm going to probably hit you. I was going to say this question for a little bit later on this one here, but I might just bring it up just because we mentioned PEPs. Just a quick one, and then I want to ask you something a little more directly. But this one's a question from the audience, and are we seeing PEPs penetrating market share, Tim? And I mean, what are your members seeing, and what are you seeing in the market right now?
It's been slow, Lucas, and part of that is what Chris was talking about in terms of the details at the regulatory level. I know we had a discussion with the folks at the Department of Labor. This is going back pre-pandemic, where we were looking at soon after the Secure 1.0 was passed. We sat down and talked about the various business models. Who could be the plan sponsor? Who could offer the plan? And we came up with essentially 4 different types of models that we could conceive of. And I think we were looking for that regulatory guidance to understand which ones would be acceptable and which ones would not be acceptable. And so I think there are still a lot of members who are waiting to see if many have moved forward, but I think there's still a lot of folks that are just waiting to see if how that business model design plays out.
Yeah. Thanks. And, yeah, I mean, I think that's what we're seeing as well too. There definitely is interest, but it's not it's not everybody over the waterfall, I think, with this just yet. But I think this aligns with my next question too, Tim. Just kind of how active Spark is in the industry, actively driving policy discussions to further retirement. And that's really Spark's main focus, So I'm just wondering if you can maybe walk us through some of Spark's guiding principles and how they align with, Secure 2.0 and what's coming up. So, what initiatives are being met that you're happy about?
Well, we've been very happy with the passage of the Secure Act. We're very happy with where the direction of the Secure 2.0 are heading. I think most of the folks I've seen, a lot of the participants online are familiar with Spark, but maybe not everyone knows who Spark is. So Spark is the industry association for the U.S. record keepers. We have three main focus for our organization. One is advocacy in Washington. The second is to convene the industry in forums and conferences. And then the third is to develop industry best practices. And so collectively, our members, they're record keeping the accounts of over 110 million American workers. It was 2016, I believe, we brought the industry together. When I first took over Spark, we had one focus, and that was e-delivery. Back in I think October of 2016, we brought the industry together, and we sat them down and went through an exercise that said, well, let's talk about what we want to see in the to come from Washington, because most of the things that we had been doing was really kind of working reactively. And we went through an exercise of putting ideas up on the board. We spent an entire day with industry leaders putting ideas up on the board. And then we went through and voted on the various ideas. And out of that process, we developed our first core principles, many of which found their way into Secure 1.0. So we were thrilled to see how organizing and bringing the industry together and focusing them, we could actually really kind of move the discussion in Washington. Once Secure passed, we did that process again. Chris helped lead that whole effort, and we went through a similar type of exercise. We did it virtually because of the pandemic, but we ended up coming up with a new set of principles. And the new set of principles started first off with preserve and expand the incentives that we have today. There had been some discussion about Rothification of the system. There was a lot of discussion, I think, several years ago on that. So we wanted to make sure that what we did was we didn't disrupt this really fantastic system that has been set up and has accumulated massive amounts of retirement wealth and really has made the United States the envy of the industrialized world. So that was the number one thing that we came out of it. The second was we wanted to focus on financial wellness. So financial wellness, we as an industry responded to a demand from both plan sponsors and participants on holistic help. Oftentimes when plan sponsors are asking us to help get a participant into a plan or saving more for retirement, the response from the participant is, I can't do that. I've got student loan repayments. I'm saving for a house. I'm saving for my child's education. I've got an elderly parent. I've got all these other competing interests for those dollars. And the plan sponsors the plan sponsor's response to the industry was, well, figure it out. And so the industry has developed this idea of financial wellness. But there's a lot there in financial wellness that we need to resolve before we can fully implement it. For instance, one of the big issues, if you think about financial wellness, it requires, there's a technological solution. And that's the obvious way to go for financial wellness, but that requires the collection of a lot of information to be able to provide the level of service that the participant needs. That begins to clash with privacy, another big concern of participants, plan sponsors, the industry. And so we have to navigate that, and we have to navigate it appropriately. We continue to have e-delivery and electronic administration as part of our goals. There has been the Department of Labor approved e-delivery, but there's now under new attacks. So we continue to push for e-delivery, and we want to harmonize those e-delivery rules across our industry and across the Department of Labor, IRS, and others. We're also trying to promote remote notarization. That became absolutely necessary in the COVID years, because obviously people couldn't get notarizations. And so moving to remote notarization became a necessary part of the solution during COVID. But we want to make sure that we've had that experiment. It worked extremely successful. So now what we want to do is make that permanent. And that's part of a bigger effort that Chris mentioned earlier, and that's simplification. We advocate for simplification. Obviously, costs in our industry have been driven down. We've seen them go down dramatically. But to further that reduction in cost, it really requires simplification. So easier plan designs, advancing other reforms to make retirement savings easier. Consolidated notices is a good example. Testing relief. Those are the types of things that fall into that category of simplification. And then finally, the final pillar of our regulatory and legislative focus is lifetime income. We want to encourage innovative ways to generate income and to access lifetime income options.
Thanks, Tim. I don't want to bury the lead too much here. We got some other good stuff in here too, but thank you. I know it's exciting working with Spark towards those endeavors and stuff like that. So I mean, this is especially seeing what's happening right now in the House and Senate. There is so much focus that it's exciting to think we can achieve these goals that we've been reaching for so long. So and so many of them were reached during Security 1.0 that what can happen with the next bills that are coming up. So all right, I'm gonna lighten things up a little bit. I'm gonna go back into game show time. Oh, there it is. Yeah, get the buzzer. I'm gonna channel my inner Wink Martindale. I wish I had one of those little microphones with a little dot on top there, but let's go. So this individual was awarded the Order of the Star of Romania. One of his proudest accomplishments was leading the fight to guarantee dental care for children in the Children's Health Insurance Program. And the original family name was Kardonsky. Huh? Anybody? Kardonsky.
Chris is, I'm hoping you got this, Chris.
So dental care in the what?
Dental care for children in the Children's Health Insurance Program. Come on, the Order of the Star of Romania. How many people have that?
Hey, I'm going to say Rob Portman.
Well, no, that is Senator Ben Cardin, actually.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yep. There we go, right?
So
All right.
do I get half credit?
I think so. That's a partial.
No.
No, Tim's not giving it to him. That's all right. All right, we'll get back on
I want
track.
to stay in the race.
All right, kind of a quick round, semi-quick, not super quick. Who knows? Whatever. Well, but I'll go with this. Things that are coming out in Secure 2.0. Each of you, what do you say like the top 3 things you're most excited about in this and why? And I think it might be different for each of you depending on your perspective, I guess, or where you're coming from on this. But I know certainly between Spark and yourself, Chris, I guess let's go. Who wants to go first? Anybody? Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and I think you're again prescient, Lucas, because I think it really they're important to based on, are you a plan sponsor? Are you a service provider? Are you an employee? Are you a retiree? Like, I think that all changes, but I'll just tick off a couple that I think, obviously student loan matching, right? There's as much interest in student loan matching, and firms that don't, make COVID tests that are named Abbott, like having the same capacity that Abbott Labs does to match their student loan payments of the participants, to match that as if it was a contribution to the plan for the purposes of a 401k match, allowing all employers to do that. It's a common sense idea. We all have debt, we have savings, and this kind of is a way to kind of help participants address both points and not end up without retirement savings and leaving that employer match on the table. I think, the focus on kind of just making it easier for folks to save. And that, from an individual perspective, I think increasing the RMD age is going to impact everyone, right? Either you are going to be 72 or you're going to be 75, and having the age go up, that's 3 more years for your balance to grow. Kind of in conjunction with that, I'd say, it's been a while since Congress also has focused on IRA issues. So, the bill, that the House and the Senate have both in some form address the ability of participants to make greater catch-up contributions to their plan or their IRA based on their age. So you get a special age catch-up. You would get the regular catch-up right now, but if you were over 60, you'd be able to make an additional catch-up, knowing that you got to make up maybe for years earlier that you couldn't do that. And then I think, there's some issues that just get a lot of attention, like CITs for 403Bs gets a lot of attention. And I think that's really popular. I'll mention one just that doesn't get a lot of attention that I think if you're a plan sponsor or a service provider, it's important to you, which is, how does Congress help you address missing participants? And by the way, if you're that missing participant, how do you find your account? How do you get that $2,000 you left at your employer a long time ago? The House and the Senate both have legislation in their Secure 2.0 bills to allow plan sponsors to work with service providers in the third-party rollover space to help connect you that way. Also have a kind of a simple but elegant proposal to establish a federal registry. So just like you can go to state treasurer and say, did I leave money in an old bank account from when I was a kid and I left $30 there, state treasurers track that to, and have a registry. There's to be a national registry that says like, I think I worked for Lucas a long time ago. I didn't like it, but I think I worked there and maybe I had some money. Let me look and see, was that there? Where is it? How can I kind of take some personal claim and responsibility to kind of find that money? That national registry, I think, will be a very simple, very elegant way to actually kind of help folks kind of track down those small pockets. Folks are changing jobs a lot, right? So this will be kind of even more important in the years ahead. So that's maybe going to be different than Tim's list.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think so, Chris. I think you nailed it. Because if you think back on our priorities, Lucas, the idea of student loans, everyone knows that the student loan debt is crippling. It's been something that, unfortunately, the retirement industry has to deal with now as employees come into the workspace. They're bringing with them all of that higher ed debt that they've incurred. And so we need to address that. So As part of that financial wellness package, that solution is very helpful. Chris also mentioned the 403B and the availability of CITs. Again, that falls into the bucket of the simplification process. Again, why would you have a different rule for nonprofits than you would for 401k plans? It didn't make sense. It was just an oversight in terms of the process earlier. And then finally, the missing participants operationally, those are very difficult. People leave employment, and it's years before they're required to have their RMD, and people have lost track of them. And so that's, again, falls into that category of simplification that is a big focus for us.
Yeah, the RMD one is interesting. I have a very high salt intake, so I hope I make it to RMD age there, but we'll see about that. But yeah, no, I agree.
We hope so.
Well, Lucas, I'll tell you, the thing about an RMD that everyone forgets, but is very important, you don't have to wait to 72 to take it. You just have to take it at 72.
That's
so
true.
You can take it any darn time you want.
That's a good point. Thanks, Chris. There's hope for me yet. So, there are two topics you brought up in there, and I think there are questions from the viewers on that, or from the audience. So I'll grab one right now because it's come up a couple times. Let's see, that question, if I remember correctly, was Secure 2.0. 403Bs, specifically variable annuity accounts, to include CITs as an investment option. Is this? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah,
yes,
what's going on? So so there was to get back again, Lucas's choose your own adventure questions are very prescient. There was a provision that Senator Cardin and Senator Portman, who are kind of the archetypes of the Senate retirement process over many years. They've been doing this for 40 years together on a bipartisan basis. They had a provision a few years ago in their bill, which kind of became the bones, kind of the skeletal infrastructure of the Senate Finance Committee proposal, to allow for collective investment trusts and 403Bs, but then to also not disadvantage existing 403B investments, in this case, kind of separate account products, and provide kind of across the board parity from securities exemptions for not only the new incoming CITs, but the existing separate account products that are there. And I think, as it's saying here today, it's, August 31st, tomorrow's September 1st. I think we're feeling, that both of those provisions, that whole package, is likely to be included. There was a little bit of a jurisdictional snafu that kind of potentially equatable to like a little playground fight, between committees of jurisdiction that created a little bit of a speed bump. But I think there's been a lot of work from folks probably on this call and your industry peers to kind of educate about the importance of what a low-cost CIT is and why it would make sense to provide those in 403Bs, but then also not to disrupt the marketplace completely. And if you're going to exempt a CIT from securities regulation, for securities exemption registration, then you should exempt the same underlying products, the separate accounts. They're already exempted from those same SEC regulatory registration requirements in the 401k. So that's a long way of saying that's a super informed question, Lucas. I'm a little scared that the audience might be smarter than the panelists.
Oh, I would guarantee it. That's for sure. At least the moderator, for sure. So, we talk about things that we're excited about, right, in Secure 2.0. I don't want to use the term things we're not excited about, because I think that's the wrong phrasing, right? But there are certainly some things I think that, from a different perspective, say an operations perspective, there might be people that are less excited than others, I guess, about some of these things coming up. Tim, I guess I direct this one to you. What are your members seeing as some of the biggest challenges or hurdles that will be coming up in implementing some of these changes? And I'm sure that people are still reeling from changes in Secure 1.0 and the CARES Act and things like that. I mean, what are you your members, I guess, seeing, and what are they foreseeing as hurdles coming up? So, and the challenges, certainly timelines, but
well, I think, and Chris kind of touched on this earlier when he talked about the timeline. You think back before Secure Act, 14 years, Chris, before we saw the previous major retirement legislation, and then you had Secure. Immediately you had the CARES Act, and now we've got another Secure 2.0. That it's an amazing amount of change happening in a pretty short period of time. So one of the concerns is always the deadlines for implementation. That's always critical for our members to be able to. These are big organizations. You're a big organization. You know that it's difficult to turn a big ship on a dime. So it takes a long time for, and there's a lot of other competing projects underway. So I would say that implementing deadlines is probably the thing that keeps most of the operational folks up at night.
Yeah, Lucas, I'll just add, I mean, I think that, implementing deadlines is a very polite way of saying effective dates. Kind of when do I have to deal with this, right? And I think there are a couple challenges that we're watching pretty closely. One, and I'm with you, the HAT word, I'm trying to get my fifth grader not to use. So things we strongly dislike. One of the things on that list is a new requirement that's in the House bill that we think will likely be in the final bill, which would require all 2020 electronic delivery safe harbor plans. So folks basically, plan sponsors and their service providers using default electronic delivery would require those participants to receive one paper benefit statement a year. That's going to be a little bit of an implementation challenge. It's not something we're for. In fact, we really think it's just going to be a benefit to paper companies, and the participants are going to pay for it. We don't think it's the best policy, but think it's likely to be there. And that's going to be something folks are going to have to work to implement if nothing changes kind of by the start of 2023. One, I think that we're all going to deal with, and to steal a Mike Hadleyism, as Lucas knows and Mike and Tim knows, Mike's my smarter, better looking colleague here at Davis and Harman. We talked all of these things. They're all kind of the desserts, but with every dessert comes the pre-dessert, otherwise known as the vegetables, the things we have to eat, not the things we want to eat. In that regard, like in Congress, that's all the good stuff, but how do you pay for it? How do you make the good stuff possible? And one of the largest driving pay-fors in both the House and the Senate bill is a simple provision that says, look, if you want to make a catch-up contribution, great. You're now going to do that on a post-tax or otherwise Roth basis. So kind of require all catch-up contributions to be Roth. I think two things there. One, we've now seen that it's likely if that goes forward that'll start in 23, not in 24, not in 23. So we'll have, if it passes this year, we'll still have a year to get ready for that. But we're also tracking, and I think on the implementation and operations side, I think Tim's correct to note, some folks are going to not really like. One idea they're considering is not just requiring all catch-up contributions to be made Roth, but all catch-up contributions made by certain people of a certain income. Kind of above this number, you have to make Roth. Below, you could continue to do traditional. How that gets structured, we don't know right now. Will it be included in the final bill? We don't know right now, but that's a big bowl of whatever vegetable you don't like. I like Brussels sprouts, so I won't use that. I think they're delicious, especially if roasted. But that's going to be an operational challenge, certainly for firms and their service providers.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. And mainly in that I want to apologize for our audience. We did try to get Mike Hadley, but he's a tough person to get on here. We were left with Chris here, unfortunately. No, I'm teasing Chris, but
you're not wrong, but it's okay.
No, but I think that some of the things that are built in to the revisions, at least effective dates going out, that it's not it has to be effective next year. I think there is some sensitivity, right? Whether it be in the department or Treasury or the House or Senate or something like that, to what the operational requirements are to enact some of these things. We saw it with long-term part-time, and things like that. Where it wasn't day one you have to enact these things. So there is some sensitivity, it seems like, which is good. Maybe not enough, and especially when you look at Secure 1.0, and we still don't have all the answers. It's how do you implement something that they expect you to do and not have the answers for it. So. But all right, you guys are.
And I think Congress does listen. Another operational challenge where there's a little of a difference, but I think I'll give away. I think what is the good answer is on increasing the RMD age, right? Very popular. And I just saw there's a question here about the RMD age and what's appropriate, and I'll leave that to the actuaries. And I'm like Lucas. I just hope to get the number and I'll deal with the RMD when I get there. But how does that happen? The House bill said, hey, let's go from 72 to 73. Let's wait a couple of years, then we'll go to 74. We'll wait a couple more years, then we'll go to 75. The Senate bill says, hey, let's go from 72 to 75 in 2036. We'll do the whole change all at one time, all at the end. I think that's how things will go in a final bill. It's operationally easier for all of us, and it actually ends up costing less because it means there's 8 or 9 years of no changes before there's one big change. But I think the point I'm trying to make, Lucas, is while we might have operational challenges and the Hill might want to listen to them, they're not going to make that the final word. They're going to do they're going to get the policy they want, even if it creates, a little bit of a heartburn for operations teams over the holidays or, early in the next year.
Yeah, well, it's not just what they want, it's sometimes what they need, right? So for a reconciliation, right, they have to be neutral, right, in costs, right? So, the Rothification seems to be something they like to dip into a little bit, right? So, it just, maybe that's, I don't know, maybe I'm misreading that, Chris, but that's right. So, I don't know, maybe more to come. So, all right, I guess you guys have earned another trivia question there. So here's a good one. Avid kayaker. Smuggled a kayak into China to kayak the Yangtze River in the 80s. Also kayaked the entire length of the Rio Grande. Yeah,
this is
there it is. Yeah, it has a titanium collarbone. You were correct, yes, sir. Probably unrelated to titanium.
So in his office, I mean, this is my office. Like, I've got all kinds of weird stuff on the walls here. He has a huge kayak hanging up on the wall. It's kind of weird to sit on the couch underneath that. You've got to trust the bolts. And then a photo of him and his son kayaking through it. So that one I got. All right.
Yeah, that one.
I'm closer to getting Lucas on my voicemail. I'm pretty excited by this.
That's it. You should be very excited. So, very good. And I'm glad this whole trivia thing could have really gone either way. So I'm glad it's panning out here. We're getting some traction. So, all right. So looking back, I guess over the last year or I don't know, I guess years, right? With COVID, I'm like in this weird time loop. I say remember like this last month, and someone's like, "Look, that was 2 years ago." But so looking back, I guess at COVID, right? Do you see any lasting impacts, I guess, to retirement, or is it something that's really too early to tell? I mean, COVID loans. We thought those were going to be a little bit more prevalent, and maybe not so in reality, right? About the number of those that happened. You've got the Great Resignation. It's potentially taking people out of retirement savings. I mean, it's like a 10-minute wait to get a coffee at Dunkin' Donuts or something like that. So, I mean, what are you guys seeing as lasting impacts from COVID? Or, and I say lasting impacts, but maybe some good things have come out of it too, as well. But
well, I mentioned earlier, Lucas, I mean, one of the things that we got to experiment with was remote notarizations. And I think that, we saw positive results from that, very positive results from that. And we're hoping that experiment becomes permanent. That's one of the areas where we think that there was a positive result. I think the other thing that we also discovered is in working like this remotely, we've been able to learn how to make more efficient those interactions with participants. I know a lot of the advisor community were used to sitting down over a kitchen table, and a lot of them moved to virtual meetings and being able to sit with participants, and that helps drive down the cost as well. So there were those positive results.
Yeah, I think I'll add Lucas too, because we touched on this a little bit, but I think we've seen Congress see the importance of emergency savings and facilitating different ways for different employers and service providers to meet the needs of their differing employee populations, right? So on the Senate side, if there was, if you ask me kind of what are the big differences between the House and the Senate bills, I'd say the Senate bills have two separate related but different approaches to addressing emergency savings, both from a tax and from an ERISA perspective. And I think those ideas gained more currency over the pandemic, where people kind of, we feared that they would drain their account. They didn't, but I do think it kind of increased the interest among employers, and certainly, to benefit their employees about making sure they have kind of short-term emergency savings. So I think that's one thing. And I saw Lucas here. I think someone raised their hand, and I think you reminded us in the past, like if you have a question, just pop it in the chat. We've answered some of those, so folks should feel free to do that, right?
Yeah, thanks for noticing that, Chris. I didn't notice that there. I think we have just 10 minutes left too. I think we will have a hard stop at the top, but so I'll go into I guess another question as we look forward. So should Secure 2.0 pass as we see it today, right? As your crystal ball there, Chris, that you said as of today, right? Everything that's in it. What are a couple of things, just quickly, I guess, that might be looked at following this? And I know, are we putting the cart before the horse or so? But the ththings that have been left on the cutting room floor, I guess, that we might see coming back in another bill that have already been scrapped. And Tim, I guess other things too from Spark initiatives. We already talked about what some of the Spark initiatives are today. Some of them are met through Secure 2.0. I know you've got a large focus on data privacy and data sharing. That's been a large focus of Spark recently. Sorry not to bury your lead on that there, Tim. But if there's a couple things, I'll give maybe 2 minutes each there on that. So maybe Chris, you want to start?
I can start because it's one thing that we thought had a likelihood of being included and ultimately wasn't, which is kind of building again from 1 to 2.0 on the lifetime income components. Kind of there have been bipartisan support for kind of default lifetime income, default annuitization at distribution, greater ways to kind of shore up people's financial security once they have that distribution. That's one thing. And I think another thing to tie, the bipartisan Secure 2.0 with the partisan now reconciliation bill that the Congress passed just last month, or actually just this month, we're still in August, is I think at some point Congress needs to reckon with kind of a plan requirement. Right, states are proliferating their secure choice programs and requiring employers in those states to offer their employees in a plan or to enroll them in the state plan. Democrats, some of which are more comfortable with that, included a proposal in their reconciliation to require virtually all employers to offer a plan. It didn't have bipartisan support. It didn't maybe even have all the Democratic support, and it got dropped. But I think that's a topic kind of that we're going to continue to see get some oxygen, but face a challenging path ahead. Is kind of, should you just like you're required to have car insurance, should you be required to have retirement access as an employee?
You're right, Lucas. We are looking at that again, that potential collision between financial wellness and privacy, and right now our industry, we don't have a position on that because some members have one school of thought. There's actually 3 different schools of thought with regard to data, and so what we're doing right now is looking at the potential ramifications of each of those schools of thought and trying to better understand the needs of the market and also the concerns when it comes to privacy. So we're researching that now, and hopefully we will be able to find a path forward. But right now, we don't have that.
Yeah, I know that I've been on a couple of those meetings as well too, and I think it's important because if we're not proactive about our approach here, and we could end up with a patchwork of state mandates, right, that we've got to try to adhere to, as opposed to being proactive and try, as it relates to privacy, and try and come up with the best practices and maybe present that forward, if that's what we collectively decide to do, right? So
yes, and to that end, I mean, we would prefer not to have laws in 50 states because I think it would be unworkable. But we also are concerned that we were active in California because we were the only, at the time, the only financial services organization to be active in California, because we didn't want their goals of providing privacy, which are all very valid and all very important, to be looked at and then prevent the necessary sharing of data that's required to provide for employee benefits. So there's obviously a lofty goal here for privacy, but then when you implement it, it in the legal terms could stop the flow of data, which is necessary for the offering of employee benefits, which I don't think anyone wants.
No. So, thank you.
Lucas, I'm pretty excited that we're like 4 months away from the end, and you haven't put me on the spot about whether this webinar means people need to be ready for next year and it passes, or we get next year to prepare for the year after. I'm liking that.
Well, do you want to take that?
Now that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, look, we should talk about that, right? What's the chances of this happening this year? And I think, I'm probably at about a 50% chance, which is, I think it might sound both glass full or glass empty, but that Congress will accomplish anything is let's start with that it won't, and then let's build out to that it might. And I think the pieces are in place here for big action. I think the challenge is just a limited time frame. This year is already September, and there's politics. I think this is an election year, so there's going to be an election, and there might be a change in power, and there might be a perception of a change in power. And then there's politics as it relates to kind of issues unrelated to the bipartisanship in the retirement space that could kind of spike the ball on progress on other issues. So, I think there's a great case to be made that it will happen this year. I think there's certainly headwinds, a nice industry term that means somewhat nothing, sometimes something that it faces. But I think there's a reason to have this webinar and be prepared, because there's a fair chance that it could get enacted this year. And if not this year, these ideas are popular. They're going to get enacted at some point. So I think we do need to be ready, and it's great that folks took time to participate.
Yeah. No, and I did have that as a question, Chris, on that. And I know one of the things that you like to say, and I fully agree with, is mathematics, right? And there's only so many days left in the year that are working days for that to happen. Is that something that's a possibility? So thank you for grabbing that. I'm going to give one final parting trivia question right here. Individual worked as a janitor while a law student, wrote a song for Ted Kennedy that was featured in the movie Ocean's 12 called Souls Along the Way. And the last clue, he was sadly the longest serving Republican senator. So, Chris, this
Orrin
one.
Hatch?
Yes, sir. A former Senator Orrin Hatch. So I could not have a trivia quiz about retirement and not include him, who's been very, very instrumental, I think, to our retirement industry. So yes, so I couldn't leave him out. So wow, that's it. You went, I think, 4 for 4, 3.5 for 4.
Wait. I think he got one wrong. He got the Ben Cardin one wrong.
All right, yeah. He's claiming credit for it though. But all right, hey, it's
I know,
fun, guys.
I know I didn't get any, but
yeah. I think we're close to closing time here. Somehow we managed to wrangle this in. I want to thank everyone for attending today. And I hope it's been informative. And there's something that everyone took away from this, hopefully non-trivia related, preferably, I guess. But if that's all you got, that's all you got. And anyways, but I'd like to especially thank Tim and Chris for joining me today. They're really good sports and letting me piggyback along with them and make it seem like I'm smarter than I am. But Spark has been a great resource for us at Congruent. And we truly appreciate everything Tim and the Institute has done. I think, as an industry, I think it's something we should all be thankful for, all the hard work its members do. And that's a little, shameless self-promotion as a member. So I'll pat myself on the back there too as part of it. But I did want to say thank you, Tim. And of course, as members of Spark, we have frequent access to resources like Chris and the knowledge he and other members of Davis and Harman bring along. And it's always a pleasure hearing from you guys. So once again, I want to say thank you. Wish everyone a great rest of the day. A happy and safe Labor Day weekend coming up. I'm going to wave because that's what we do nowadays, I guess, in web meetings, although I don't know why, but I never waved on calls before, but here we are. But thank you all for attending, and thank you, Tim and Chris, for joining me today. So
thank you, Lucas.
Thanks,
Chris.
Thanks.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.